the biggest story unfolding before their eyes.
Surrounded by friggin' UFOs.
Of a UFO battle in orbit around Earth.
I believe that's 0428.
Australia, the globalists are winning, and look what's happening to our country. We're becoming overpopulated, can't afford housing, we can't even afford the weekly grocery bill. What's going on? Why is the economy like this? What's happened in Australia? Well, here's the reasons why. 1. We are dependent on selling all our minerals to other countries. 2. We are in heavy debt to other countries and their lobbyists that enable them to do so. 3. Politicians don't care about their citizens whatsoever. Not that that comes as a surprise. 4. Extreme influx of immigrants has raised up the real estate market up astronomically, so all the politicians' investment properties are paying off quite well now. 5. Large corporations own our politicians and mainstream media, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Chinese spy ring plotted to get an agent of influence elected to Parliament. Our Parliament comes soon after Paul Keating, the former Labor Prime Minister, said critics of China, they're just hysterical.
Of the preponderant Asian economic power, China. 2 underlying propositions go to this degeneration. The second proposition, debated more openly, is that China is not a democracy. Well, God help us if we are limited or slated to deal only with democracies.
He's very good on economics. He's fascinating when he talks about the global economy, but he seems to have a blind spot on China, doesn't he? I mean, remember during the federal election when he got whacked over the head by Bill Shorten because Keating gave that interview where he said the nutters are in charge of our security agencies. He said you've got to sack them. He said you've got to clean them out. Shorten's got to clean them out. I mean, he does have this strange view about China. Now, he's on the advisory board of the International Advisory Board of the China Development Bank. He has been for many years.
Oh, there we go. Another person with political power and influence who, again, is paid off and owned by one of the globalist corporations, a large majority shareholder of Australia's economy. Here's Tucker Carlson showing his view about politicians in the US and Australia.
So we have a couple big companies are buying all the residential housing. So people can't buy houses. Just so like a couple people can become super, super rich. And they're wrecking American society by doing that. No one ever talks about that. And next time someone lectures you about colonialism or like something your great-great-grandparents did or somebody else's great-great-grandparents did, why don't you just shut up, actually? I'm not going to take that from you. You're trying to make us hate each other on the basis of our race. I know what you're doing. You're like, oh, no, we feel so bad about this group or that. You don't feel bad at all. You've done nothing to help that group at all. You've helped no one ever. You're hurting people for your own benefit. The point is not to solve problems from 300 years ago. Those are unsolvable. They were 300 years ago. Everyone's dead. The point of these conversations is to make people hate each other within the country so they don't notice that the leadership is wrecking the country and getting rich while they do it.
And if you're some closed-minded person who hasn't done any research in the past history of our society and the politicians that have ruined our great country of Australia and countries overseas, what they've done to their own nations, well, the proof is in the pudding. Here's some of the facts about the globalists who really run our governments.
Between 70 and 80%, depending on what poll you read, do not want to have to choose between President Biden and President Trump. They are tired of choosing the lesser of two evils to the hands of the superdelegates. The superdelegates are largely chosen by the donors to the party. And those donors are these giant corporations like BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, the Pfizer, the military industrial complex, the pharmaceutical companies.
Because 5 companies control basically everything.
Wish we could travel backwards through time, have this information available to us, and see once more the propaganda and certainty, the hysteria and condemnation that defined that period. Do you not think it's significant that Pfizer and Moderna are making these extraordinary profits? Can you explain to us the phenomena of excess deaths? What are these meetings that Fauci's having? Can you talk us through these emails? Do you think it's right that Bill Gates has got this much influence within the WHO?
Pharmaceutical industry donates millions to both Australian political parties. What? No way. The left and the right getting funded by the pharmaceutical industry? Big Pharma? The people that were supposed to protect us from the so-called COVID epidemic? Now, why would the pharmaceutical industrial complex want to fund our governments? Oh, about 72 separate pharmaceutical business engaged and paid lobbyists to influence government decisions and policies. Ah, there we go. I don't see any connection with the COVID propaganda campaign and selling COVID vaccines. I don't see any connection here from Big Pharma trying to pay off our mainstream media and our politicians to try and push their agenda. No. Come on, this can't be true. Gladys Berejiklian joins other high-profile politicians who have had their political career ended by corruption? No way! She wouldn't have had something to do with pushing the propaganda out to do with the COVID injections.
Please make sure you get tested and stay home. Otherwise, you will be followed up, you will be checked on. Absolutely, no, they'll absolutely have to self-isolate. New South Wales has been successful because we've taken a very hard line. People need to know that this is not a joke. You need to take it seriously. Every day, Health is asking people to stay home and isolate.
No, she wasn't getting paid off by Big Pharma. No way! This is all just conspiracy, as all Big Pharma wants is the best for us. They don't want to make billions of dollars off taxpayers' money. And now you see where big corporations and governments' interests align. Uncanny that, isn't it, with what happened with the COVID epidemic? Let's see where else our Australian government's interests lie. I found this guy called Punters Politics on YouTube who exposes Australia's government connections with globalists and lobbyists and huge corporations that they end up mysteriously and circumstantially connecting with. Something fishy going on here?
Job swapping between public servants and fossil fuel lobbyists.
I wonder why politicians are leaving government so abruptly to become lobbyists for large corporations. Well, here's why.
Former Federal Trade Minister Andrew Robb walked straight out of his ministerial position, take up a lucrative, I wonder how lucrative is, high-level consultancy firm for Chinese-owned company Landbridge, was publicly defending, selling this port to 99 years to the Chinese. I know it sounds controversial, but it's a really good idea.
I know it doesn't come as a surprise to you, but the extent of how Australia is being sold out is absolutely disgraceful. Australia, the future is bleak. Now here's some of the things going on around the world, especially with the EU and large corporations like BlackRock, who secretly are the controller behind the Iron Curtain.
This EU empire, ever seeking to expand, stated its territorial claim on the Ukraine some years ago. He directly encouraged the uprising in the Ukraine that led to the toppling of the President Yanukovych, and that led, of course, in turn to Vladimir Putin reacting. And the moral of the story is if you poke the Russian bear with a stick, don't be surprised when he reacts. Now, just to continue with that, today we are rushing through an association agreement at undue speed with the Ukraine, and as we speak, there are NATO soldiers engaged in military exercises in the Ukraine. Have we taken leave of our senses? Do we actually want to have a war with Putin? Because if we do, we're certainly going about it the right way. Perhaps we ought to recognise that the West now faces the biggest threat and crisis to our way of life that we have seen for over 70 years. The recent beheadings of the British and American hostages graphically illustrates the problem. And of course we have our own citizens from our own countries engaged in that struggle too. In the war against Islamic extremism, Vladimir Putin, whatever we may think of him as a human being, is actually on our side. I suggest we grow up. I suggest we recognise the real threat facing all of our countries, communities and societies. We stop playing war games in the Ukraine and we start to prepare a plan to help countries like Syria, like Iraq, like Kenya, like indeed Nigeria, to try and help them to deal with the real threat that faces us. Let's not go on provoking Putin.
But the companies that do it lobby Congress. They spend millions lobbying Congress.
The hedge funds, BlackRock, the banks, these guys are campaign financing. Yep, you can buy your candidates. And obviously we have the system in place. First there's the senators, and these guys are rich. You got 10 grand, you can buy a senator.
Biden appointed a former BlackRock MD to the cabinet, in particular to sort out the post-Ukrainian reconstruction.
There you go, folks. Not everything in politics is as clear as it seems, and the lies aren't as simple as you think they are. They are a lot more complex, and we really have to take a long, hard look at ourselves and really think who we're voting for. We need to do more than vote. We need an uprising. We need everything to change, because right now, Australia, the world, the future is looking bleak.
They are the criminals. You are not the criminals. They don't care about your country, which belongs to you. So when they tell you it's not your country, that you're on someone else's land and you should feel bad about that, how is that a democracy?
Like, share, follow, and check out my Instagram, Aussie UFO News.